every day something happens, something happens, something happens.
There is a do not travel advisory.
It's a war zone. This is a war zone.
An active war zone.
Massive barrage of rockets.
Over there in Gaza.
The Gaza Strip.
Gaza.
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 Chaos in Gaza. Hamas gunmen.
Hamas fighters.
Hamas.
Hamas,
Hezbollah.
Team Hezbollah is there in Iraq. Iran.
Lebanon.
Jordan.
From Bahrain to Baghdad.
Arab nation.
The Arab world.
The region.
The Middle East.
the Middle East.
In the entire Middle East.
So welcome to a normal day in Egypt. Although you may see things on your TV screens at home, on the news, things going on in other countries, they're showing protests, they're showing riots, they're showing demonstrations, and they generalize that it's the whole Middle East. I want to show you live at about 11:30, 12 noon on Thursday here in Egypt, in the heart of Cairo, in central Cairo, in Tahrir Square. This is where the demonstrations took place during the Arab Spring, during the revolution. Anytime there's something serious going on in Egypt, this is where you would see people gathering and things going on. So I want to show you right now, today, what's going on here, to show you the difference between what you're seeing on your television and what's happening live on the ground here in Egypt. Let's have a look. See? This is Egypt live. This is Egypt right now, Thursday, October 19th, about noon, lunchtime. People going to lunch, people coming from their office, going to work, riding the bus, walking about, cars going. Actually, it's a little bit light traffic today. But as you can see, it's nothing like what the Western media are giving you the impression of on your TV screens back home. This is normal Egypt. This is everyday Egypt. And this is what you're going to find when you come here. And I'm getting stopped by a police officer now. Now, what you might see at home on the screen, on your television screen for news, is going to be very different. They're going to be giving a very different impression of what places like Egypt and the rest of the Middle East look like. And it may be that in those other countries, they are having demonstrations, they are having protests, they are having unrest. But as I've said over and over again, when things happen in neighboring countries, it does not mean that the same thing is going on here in Egypt. Egypt is very, very different for a lot of reasons. And as you can see here, this is live. What's today? Thursday, October 19th, I think. This is what's going on here live. We're at about noon, maybe 11:30 in the morning, noon here local time in Cairo. It is a big nothing burger here in Egypt. It's very, very normal. So to show you that it's not just this one place, even though if there were going to be something going on, this would be the place. Let me take you to a few other places around Cairo and show you what else is going on today, Thursday, October 19th. To show you that it's a perfectly normal day in Egypt, just like every day for the past week has been, every day for the next week is going to be, the next month, and continuously. Let's go see a few other places.
As you can see for yourself from a trusted source, your person on the ground here in Egypt, the picture that our news channels back home, even our trusted news sources, are all painting with gigantic brushstrokes about the entire Middle East is just not true. At least not here in Egypt. Oh, and remember that day of rage that supposedly followed the next day on Friday, October 20th?
For a day of rage across the Arab world and beyond.
A day of rage.
A day of rage.
A day of unprecedented anger.
Back home in North America and Europe and Australia and everywhere in the West, you had images and footage on your TVs all day long, 24 hours a day, of riots and chaos and out-of-control protest in the streets everywhere here. You want to see what it looked like here in Egypt on that day? I probably should not be showing you this because elements from different fronts might get upset with me for including this, but I think it's important. It shows how civilized and in control Egypt really is. This is the public square right outside of the American Embassy here in Cairo. And this is the square nearest to the Israeli embassy here. Yes, they have one. And no, Egyptians are not out rioting in front of it, or storming it, or burning their own neighborhoods down like many are doing in your countries back home. Now, that doesn't mean that Egyptians don't know what's going on outside their own country, or that they don't care about these tragedies. But people here in Egypt are expressing themselves in more meaningful ways, such as on social media. Now, there have been some demonstrations here in Egypt, but they have been very controlled and very organized. They've taken place mainly in interior areas, such as stadiums, or in the courtyard of Al-Azhar Mosque, which is, by the way, kind of like the Vatican of the Islamic world, and it's located right here in Cairo. But the really interesting thing about these demonstrations, the ones that have been allowed to happen here in Egypt in a very limited and controlled environment, is that their stated purpose is actually quite different from what you might think. The media would never cover this. And you'd never have a way of knowing this without a trusted source here on the ground in Egypt who can show this to you and explain it. But the protests that were held here were actually called for by the president of Egypt to ask his supporters to come out and rally in support of his decision to keep Egypt's border with Gaza tightly closed and to not let hundreds of thousands of refugees cross onto Egyptian territory on the other side of the Sinai Desert, where Egypt shares a whopping 7.5-mile long border with Gaza. When news channels back home did show footage of the few limited demonstrations that were held here in Egypt, not a single one of them told their viewers what these small crowds were actually protesting for: keeping Egypt out of this conflict by not allowing any Gazans into Egypt, especially any elements of Hamas. The president is just not going to tolerate it here. So there you have it. It can't get any more real, any more raw, any more live, accurate than what you are seeing here. You know, I always say, nothing happened today in Egypt, everything calm and peaceful, is never going to be a news story, much less a headline for any commercial media outlet. But that's the reality here on the ground in Egypt, every single day. Until the next episode, ma salama everyone.